The 49ers also made a trade last week, as we're well aware. They traded for Brian Robinson Jr. Isaac Guerendo got a little bit banged up in their preseason game with his shoulder, so we don't know if there's anything to keep an eye on there. But the biggest thing really is Kyle Shanahan coming out after the game on Saturday and saying, quote, "We brought him here to be our number 2 back." So, Dave, last week you did say following the trade that you thought it would still be maybe Guerendo. This is pretty clear now. It's Brian Robinson.
100%. And I think that it's I wonder if it's more because of injury than anything else for Guerendo, and they're just not sure where he's at right now. I feel like there's some uncertainty there, but this is a coaching staff that really liked Brian Robinson when he came out, apparently, and they had the opportunity to get him. They jumped at it, and now they've got a physical running back to use as I guess like a complementary part of their offense if they want to use him a few times a game. I can't imagine that Brian Robinson's going to take McCaffrey off the field at the goal line or even on like 3rd and 1 at midfield. And he's certainly not going to play on passing down situations. So I think it's just about adding quality depth of their position they've been decimated by because of injury this preseason.
I also think, and this might sound weird, but Brian Robinson Jr. might have more upside in this role than he had in the Washington role.
Yeah.
Just because in Washington, he was always going to share rush attempts with Jaden Daniels and Austin Eckler, and Austin Eckler was going to do most of the work in the passing down. If McCaffrey goes down, Brian Robinson Jr. might just be close to a feature back in this offense. And we know what that looks like no matter what your name is. We can go down the long list of guys who were not as highly drafted or highly regarded as Brian Robinson Jr., who had great performances in the San Francisco backfield. So that's both, I think, exciting now that you can get Brian Robinson in the double-digit rounds, and why I'm still a little bit lower, it seems like, on everybody else on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, just because I think he's going, if he just gets everything week 1, he's going into that Brian Robinson Jr. role. He's not going to have the chance to have the full breakout role.
We'll talk about the Commanders' backfield in a second when we get to the things that we saw in the preseason, or in the case of JCM, we did not see in the preseason, and we'll tell you why that could matter. I think, though, if you drafted already and you drafted Guerendo, you might want to hold him just for a week just to see what happens, if his shoulder's okay, and how the depth chart sort of plays stuff out, maybe even a few weeks into the season, unless you have to make a move. But clearly, if you're looking at it, Robinson now kind of slides into that Guerendo spot on draft boards, where you're taking him as a high-end handcuff and, potential lottery ticket in case McCaffrey, who only played 4 games last year, suffers an injury. Heath, Mike McDaniel says that De'Von Achane has had, quote, no setbacks and should practice prior to week 1. We know that Jalen Wright's dealing with a leg injury. We don't know how long he's going to be out. And Ollie Gordon, very similar to Little Bill, is another guy that's flying up draft boards as well. So give me your take on the Dolphins backfield now. I know, as we're going to get to, one of your fallers is De'Von Achane, so we'll kind of double back a little bit later. But in the case of Achane right now, do you feel comfortable and confident in still drafting him in the first 2 rounds? Or how you sort of taking this whole calf injury that he didn't play in the final preseason game, and we still don't know when he's going to be back on the practice field?
Yeah, I talked about it last week. I moved him down early in the week, and we can talk more about where to, but I'm still comfortable with him in round 2. I still think what we're hearing right now is that they think he's going to be okay for week 1. Calf injuries can be a little bit scary, can be re-aggravated. The big news here is that it seems like Ollie Gordon pretty clearly passed Jalen Wright as the number 2, and he seems like a better fit than Wright for the Raheem Mostert role that it has been in this offense. He can be the hammer. He may be the guy who leads the Dolphins in rushing touchdowns, although he probably won't lead the league like Mostert did. I definitely have Gordon ahead of Jalen right now. I wouldn't want to get too carried away, just because if we're right and Achane's okay, it's not like Ollie Gordon's going to be someone who probably turns into a starter. He might be a flex. And if something happens to Achane, I think the passing down work that we're so excited about from him probably goes to Jalen Wright and not to Ollie Gordon.
But Dave, in terms of just the 2 guys that we talked about, Brian Robinson as a handcuff to McCaffrey, and now Gordon as the handcuff to Achane, who do you want more?
I want Gordon more, because I think Gordon might have a sustainable role all season long. Not necessarily, like to Heath's point, I don't think he'll be any better than like a bye-week flex, something like that, when Achane's healthy. But I think it's fair to question just how healthy Achane will be over the course of the year. I asked McDaniel about that last week. He said that he wants to use multiple running backs. He called that an ultimate weapon against the defense. I think Gordon does a lot of good things for the Dolphins. He's physical. He can run the zone. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. We saw that in the preseason game. I saw that in the practices that I saw. I think he's a decent back. And so when I look at Gordon, if I can get him, I'm looking for him in the double-digit rounds like everybody else. But if I had to take him in late round 9, like there really wasn't any other running back I liked better, okay, fine, I'll take him. Plus, there's the off chance that Achane, maybe they take their time with him. Maybe they really want to make sure that calf is okay. Those injuries are always tricky. Everybody who had Christian McCaffrey last year remembers how tricky calf injuries are. So I think that there's definitely a possibility that Gordon opens the season week 1 against Indianapolis as the lead running back for the Dolphins. Drafting somebody like that in round 10, I think it's a fine plan. I don't have a problem with it at all.
Couple other running back news items just to keep an eye on. Chargers general manager Jay Horwitz, am I saying that right, Dave?
Joe Hortiz
said that Najee Harris can potentially play in week 1. So just keep that in mind with Omari and Hampton. We'll talk about Hampton a little bit later, but Najee Harris may be able to get on the field for week 1. So we'll see how much that impacts the Chargers backfield. ESPN reports that Jaydon Blue suffered an ankle injury, but just a low ankle sprain against Atlanta in the final preseason game for the Cowboys. Heath, have you changed your opinion on Blue and Javonte Williams based on maybe how preseason unfolded and with the ankle injury?
I think that Javonte Williams is going to open the season as the starter. I hope my tone reflects my enthusiasm. I don't really think that Jaydon Blue is going to be a feature back in the NFL, even if he's healthy. I think he's a great change of pace back potentially. But the problem is that like his best skill set's probably working on passing downs. And the only thing Javonte Williams did good last year was pass protection. So I think it's kind of a tough fit right now. I'm not sure if I've drafted a Cowboys running back, and I'm just kind of hopeful they trade for Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, I mean, there's still potential for them to add somebody to this, and we'll see what happens with their final 53-man roster because Phil Maffa, their 7th-round draft pick, is on the bubble right now. So we'll see if they want to keep him. That could be telling what they think of Blue and his injury. But right now it looks, or even Miles Sanders. I mean, he's also on the roster bubble as well. But it does look like, as Heath said, Javonte Williams is the number 1 running back for the Cowboys going into the season. Probably somebody you want to take as a low-end flex as opposed to a high-end flex, but a good bench piece for you maybe at the start of the season. As Adam alluded to last week, look, Rico Dowdle, probably not the most impressive running back, but did get you some quality production as the year went on. So if the Cowboys offensive line is okay, someone will do some damage in this backfield, and maybe Javonte Williams can do some work in the passing game. Keith, when we look at the Browns backfield, we know Quinshon Judkins still not signed by Cleveland. 2nd-round pick, had the domestic violence arrest, and charges were dismissed, if I'm explaining that correctly. But in terms of his roster position, he is still not with the Cleveland Browns. So they had their preseason game against the Rams, and Dylan Sampson was the starter. First time that Jerome Ford played in the preseason, but Sampson started. They rotated basically on a 50-50 split. Give me your take on the Browns backfield right now. For anybody drafting, who are you drafting first of the Browns running backs? Dylan Sampson, Jerome Ford, or Quinshon Judkins, and rank those guys.
I would rank them Sampson, then Judkins, and I have both those guys in round 10, and then Jerome Ford later. We liked Sampson quite a bit, talked about him a lot on FFT Dynasty in April before the NFL draft. Jacob Gibbs was a huge fan of his and has 7 million videos of him running in college and the preseason and probably high school and middle school also. And he's a good running back who can do some things in the passing game. Jerome Ford will be involved. It's not going to be a feature running back situation. Listen, I asked, I think it was 10 days ago on Twitter, at what point do we get concerned about Quinshon Judkins not signing a contract? This was like 4 or 5 days after the charges had been dropped. He's not signed, and there's not been a lot of reporting that he's close to being signed. And they're playing real football in less than 2 weeks. I'm not going to draft him first amongst the Browns running backs. There is a possibility he gets signed in the next few days, and then I will. There's also a possibility that 10 days from now, Quinshon Judkins is still not signed by the Cleveland Browns, and Dylan Sampson is the best value at running back in fantasy football drafts.
Everything's up in the air with this group. I love the theory of drafting Quinshon Judkins and waiting, but to Heath's point, it's going to be, if he signs today, August 25th, well, 2 weeks from now is effectively less than 2 weeks until week 1. So he would need 2 more weeks on top of that to really get an understanding of what he's being asked to do in the offense. I don't know if they've handed him a playbook. He hasn't signed a contract yet. I don't think they would do that. And so at the absolute earliest, and this is if he signs today, we're talking about him contributing by week 4, week 5. We don't know how good he'll be at that point, but I think he's the type of talent that would be effective for the Browns by the time we get to Halloween. And so if you draft Quinshon Judkins, it's with the idea that you're going to be patient and you're going to wait so long. But you could say, I'm not patient. I want somebody that's going to help me now, and be whiny like that. And Dylan Sampson would be the guy to go and draft instead, who I thought his speed was so evident in just a few seconds. He only played 5 snaps with Flacco, but when he had the ball, he looked really good, except for the one play when the offensive line couldn't make any space for him. So I kind of like the idea of getting Sampson if you need a running back now. And if you can't get your hands on Sampson and you still need a running back now, Ford's the guy. But if you can afford to be patient, Quinshon Judkins would be the one to get. As of now, I have Judkins ranked the highest of the 3, but they're all not too far from each other.
I have Ford still the highest ranked. They're back to back. I dropped Ford after the preseason game because I thought maybe he had the opportunity to be the clear-cut starter, and maybe Sampson working in and then seeing what would happen with Judkins. I just wonder, like, when they're in obvious passing situations, are they going to trust Dylan Sampson to pass protect for a 40-year-old quarterback, and maybe Ford gets those opportunities
They don't have to
right away. So that's why I give Ford a slight bump, but I think the upside certainly favors Sampson. And look, this backfield, as much as we've seen a decline since the week 2 injury for Nick Chubb in 2023, Ford's had some good moments. Adam has the numbers, I remember it, but most
60-yard runs, I think.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, I made the comment about a competent offense at the beginning of the year. Like, what if Dylan Sampson gets to be the lead running back for 6 games with Joe Flacco, and then Quinshon Judkins finally gets up to speed and he's the lead running back with Dylan Gabriel?
Yeah.
Can't rule that out.
Yeah, or Kenny Pickett, or even Shadur Sanders. You never know. But yes, Dylan Gabriel might be the backup there. Big conversation going on in Cleveland. Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback? I want to get through a couple more things before we get to our risers and fallers. So let's move a little quicker on these. Dave, Nick Chubb did not play. Dameon Pierce got the start. Who's the running back you're looking at as the Joe Mixon replacement if he's going to miss the start of the season?
Do I have to pick one?
Well, deeper league. We're talking about Jerome Ford.
Yeah, I have Chubb after 100th overall. We've talked about a bunch of running backs that I'd rather have than Nick Chubb at this point. But I think he'll probably be the lead guy. It might be a narrow lead that he has, but he'll probably begin the year sharing with Dameon Pierce, and Woody Marks is effectively undraftable, but maybe somebody who steps up by the middle of the season. It's a mess. And we can apply the same type of logic that we use for Quinshon Judkins toward Joe Mixon. He hasn't practiced since May, and we don't know when he's coming back, and they could easily keep him on the injury list.
He at least has a contract, but
right. So like, that's a plus. He probably knows what he would be doing out there on the field if he had to get out there, but we don't know when he's going to play. We don't know how effective he'll be. It's a very messy situation. But to answer your question, Jamie, it's Chubb, but it's with minimal conviction.
I would draft Sampson, Judkins, Ollie Gordon, Tootin, all the Jags, Brian Robinson Jr. before I would draft Nick Chubb personally.
I thought you were going to say Joe Mixon at first.
I would definitely draft Joe Mixon before Chubb too.
Is anybody excited to draft Mixon at this point?
When am I doing?
Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt or Joe Mixon? Who are you drafting?
I have Mixon higher right now, but I kind of get it.
I'm fine with Mixon in round 8.
Yeah, late round 8.
It just feels like this could be a big time headache. And
it could be, but it also
look, we're gonna find out in the next 10 days at least if he's gonna open the season on the PUP list. So that could, certainly change how drafts go. Round 8 might be the earliest you're considering him, and it might fall to round 10 or 12 depending on if he's going to miss the first 6 weeks of the season.